Okay, this is a video on how to use our class data to create a beautiful graph showing standard error inside. So I'm just going to go ahead, take our class data and do a couple of calculations with it to begin. First, what I need to do is get an average. So I take an average here of these. It's going to equal the average. Pick that function there of all of these numbers here. Right, hit enter. It's going to give me the average values of all of those cells inside there. That's wonderful. I'm just going to take that for my convenience and copy those same values right down there so I can take these headers and put it here. I'm just creating a nicer looking thing. This is the top of the oak leaf. This is the bottom of the oak leaf. And here's the top of the, and I can go through and do all this stuff, right? Top of the red bud. You can type in red bud. I cannot be lazy and type in all this stuff. Bottom of the red bud leaf. Right, so now I have all of my averages, right? And then I want to do my standard deviation. Standard deviation, right? And I'm going to eventually get my standard error, right? This is what I want. And then I'm going to want 2 times my standard error. Oops, 2 times my standard error is what I'm going to want to do part of this later on. So I have kind of formatted this a little bit. Now for the standard deviation, it's easy to do this. Standard dev is my standard deviation. I want the standard deviation of this data here. Enter, then 0, because there's no variation in that data. They're all the same number. And I can just drag that over to get the standard deviation for all the rest. Standard error, just we need a reminder here, standard error of the sample is equal to the standard deviation divided by the square root of the number of samples. So I need to go here for my standard error. I'm going to say this equals this value here, the standard deviation, divided by the square root of the number of samples, which is 7 in this case, right? So I take that and I just copy that equation right on over. But this last one, I need to go and change that that value 7, because I don't have 7 values here. I only have 4. So I can go in there and change that, and I am done. All right, I got my standard deviation. Now this is just going to equal 2 times that standard error, and 2 times 0 is 0, and I have all of those in there like that. So isn't that wonderful? So I have all the data that I need. Now I need to make a beautiful graph. I want to make this graph. I select the data that I want, which is comparing the averages, number of stomata in these things. I'm going to go insert a chart. And there's my beautiful chart, right? In this chart, I'm just going to move this chart a little bit if I can, up and out of the way, if it will let me. Maybe I'll just shrink it down so I can get it out of the way. So I want to see this data here down below. So in this chart, it's really hard to get anything about this bottom of the oak leaf because it's all 0. So I'm just going to ignore that because it's kind of a pain. But I can click on an individual, and I trust that you can change the axis labels and you can properly label your side axes. The trickiest part of this is getting that standard error in there, right? So I'm going to click on this data set, and it shows up over here in Customize Series, bottom of the red bud leaf. I can go down here and click error bars. I don't want it to be percent, I want it to be a constant, and I want my constant to be 2 times my standard error, which in this case is 18.93. Right, I got my value there. Whoops, I don't want the trend line. So I got my value and it created my standard error bar. That's rather massive. It's rather large because I had a bunch of 0 values and 1 other value. I can just click on the next value here, top of the red bud leaf, and say that I want to put an error bar. I also want this error bar to be constant, but this time the top of the red bud leaf, its standard error times 2 is 6.57. And there we go. And I got a value inside there. I should have an error bar inside there. Oops, I do want that error bar to stay. And then while I'm at it, I can go and put the data label in there. It's not a bad thing to do. I can do the same thing here. Go back and put a data label in there. All right, now I go to this last one, and I put my error bar. Go ahead and put my data label. Right, I want my error bar to be constant, and this is the bottom of the oak leaf, my error bar is going to be 31.5. Yay. Right, so I get my error bar there. Now, I have all of that. I can close that chart editor. Now, I do want to go in here. If I can grab this graph and just get it out of the way, right? I don't like these huge numbers. I know it can't be that accurate, right? So I'm just going to go in here and take all these numbers here, format these numbers just to be a little bit smaller, right? When I do that, I was really hoping to change that, so maybe I should have done that before I made my graph. Oh, I guess I need to change. These are the ones I need to change. Format number. There we go. So now I can see a little bit better. So if you clean up the title, some of this stuff, I do have my error bars with the correct sizing on them, so I can see do they overlap or not. If the error bars overlap, then there's no significant difference. So there's no significant difference between the top and bottom of a red bud leaf. But here, there's clearly a significant difference between the top and bottom of an oak, and there's clearly a significant difference between the bottom of an oak and the bottom of a red bud. Oaks just have more stomata. There's how we create that graph and all that chart data. Wasn't that wonderful? It only took 6 minutes.